You are listening to the IFH Podcast Network. For more amazing filmmaking and screenwriting podcasts, just go to ifhpodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to Filmmaking Conversations with Damian Swaby. Listen to conversations with award-winning filmmakers, directors from the golden age of television, and creatives from the indie film community who continue to inspire the next generation of filmmakers. And now, over to your host, Damian Swaby.
Jason, how are you today?
I'm doing good, man. Welcome to Brooklyn.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you for letting me come into your studio today and show me where everything is. It's a great spot you have.
Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, it's we call it the Rabbit Hole Studio because we're behind the Rabbit Productions, and it's been home to the podcast since we started in 2018. So it's been it's been my home away from home, except during the pandemic when we couldn't get in here. So, now we're officially kind of back in quote normal.
Brilliant. But you still kept up your podcast, didn't you, when the pandemic happened?
Yeah, I mean, despite the pandemic, we had Zoom, of course. So it was a lot of Zoom interviews, and I kind of, it was interesting because Zoom opened up a lot. So before, it was like whoever could be here. Then when I started Zoom interviews, I was getting people from LA, getting people from your neck of the woods in London. I've interviewed people from Australia, New Zealand is probably the furthest one, Japan.
Wow.
So that was kind of the blessing in disguise for that.
That really is a good blessing in disguise to open up the podcast in that way. That's got to be really good. But you yourself, before getting into podcasts, what were you doing? You have a history in film, don't you? Yeah,
so I did not start out to be a podcaster at all. Like I didn't even know about podcasting. I mean, I knew it was a thing that other people did, but it wasn't on my radar at all. So I was a filmmaker, and I actually worked in another industry for years because I needed to support myself. I've been in New York for a long time, and this place it's incredibly expensive.
It is.
So I had a job. I worked in the fashion industry.
Oh, okay.
And then back in, I want to say around 2015 or so, I just couldn't do it anymore. I hated the job. It was getting to me. It was really stressful. And I had been making content and movies on the side. So I had some programs that I had made for YouTube and different things. But it's very hard to be in this business if you're not in this business. Like if you're not, it's like trying to be a part-time Olympic athlete.
Yeah.
You have to dedicate a lot of time to it. You have to be very focused, and it just wasn't happening for me. So I left the corporate world, started doing freelance. I started working as an editor and as a cameraman, and I started making more of my own stuff. But I really didn't know anything about the industry at all in terms of how you get anything done, or it's just nobody gives you a roadmap as to what the industry is or how to get into it. So I had seen several different podcasts. I'd watched a lot of podcasts from Collider.com. They had a YouTube channel at the time. They were just making content like crazy. And I saw Kevin Smith's podcast.
Yeah.
I saw Fat Man on Batman at the time. And I said, you know what? I had an idea of, I wanted to do a show where I, talk to filmmakers or talk to people in show business. But, I was originally going to do it more like a documentary show where I'd go out and interview people and stuff. And I was like, well, that's really expensive. That's a lot. And I couldn't do it on a regular basis. You could make maybe one show every other month if you're trying to do that, especially with the edit time that you would need. And then when I discovered podcasting and I discovered this studio, I was like, oh, you know what? I could just interview people. I could just have people come in and talk to me, and I would get a lot of good information, and I'd also make contacts in the business. So the selfish part of it was I wanted to know more. I wanted to learn. I wanted to get to know people. I wanted to make more connections because it's all about who you know.
Yeah.
Especially in this town. And I wanted someone to I wanted to talk to other people who had been successful so I could maybe take from their experience and learn from them. But then, the altruistic part of the podcast, how it started out, it's not how it is exactly today, but I wanted to demystify the business because I don't know how things are. And I want to talk to you about England.
Sure.
Because I don't know anything about how, show business runs in England. But here, it's not like in most worlds, right? So like when I worked in corporate, it's like you start out, you're somebody's assistant, then you become like an associate, then you become a whatever, and you just there's a clearly defined ladder for you to move up. In show business, there are certain things that can be like that if you're going to sort of more corporate filmmaking. So say you're, like say you're doing a shoot and you're an assistant camera. You start as a second AC, then maybe you may move up to first AC.
Yeah.
Then you move up to operator. Then if you're lucky, move up to like a DP position, right? But you could also just start out as a DP. You could just DP an indie film and then get hired as a DP, and then you're not slapping slates and cleaning and moving gear. You're a DP. Same thing with being a director. Like nobody tells you how to be a director.
Oh, no one can, I think.
Yeah, and you just
to a certain degree. So
yeah, I mean, you can learn from other directors. You can go to school, but like if you want to be a director, you have to just be a director. Like you have to. If you want to be a filmmaker, you have to make films, and nobody tells you how to do that. Now, when I was coming up, it wasn't there. Now there's YouTube and all kinds of you can take a course on Skillshare and things like that. Mm. But for me, it wasn't like there was no map, and I wanted to find a way in. So when I started talking to people and making connections, these were people that I never would have had access to before. And then, first I just started talking to my friends.
Yeah.
People I knew who were in the industry. And then it was friends and friends of friends. And then, it snowballs. And then back in 2018, the first year, I started covering film festivals and talking to filmmakers on the red carpet because I needed to talk to more people. And I was like, well, where are they?
Yeah.
Oh, they go to film festivals. So I guess I'll just go to film festivals. And I rang up Soho International Film Festival, saw that was coming up. I had never heard of the festival before, even though it was a fairly big festival. I wasn't in the festival world. I hadn't had a movie in a festival since about 2006.
Okay.
I wasn't doing that sort of route. And then they said, yeah, come down. So I found somebody to do interviews for me, and I got my camera and went down there and started talking to people. And then I started, oh, you know what? This person's got a real story. Let me bring them into the studio if they're local, and let's start interviewing them. And then et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the networking starts from there.
Yes. Yes.
So, and that's how the show is built, from that initial inception of me talking to my friends, to me talking to friends of friends, to me talking to complete strangers. And then, last year was a really big turning point because you literally went from, let me talk to somebody at a film festival who's got their first student film in a fest.
Yeah.
And they're all excited, to now we're interviewing like John Hamm on the red carpet of Tribeca. So like whole different ball game.
So how does it feel for you to be in a situation where you're a filmmaker and you're at a festival, but you haven't got one of your own films there? What does that feel like?
At first it wasn't. It was kind of like, and that's another thing that we can talk about too, because you have this struggle of being a filmmaker and also a content creator. I separate them. To me, there's a delineate. To me, there's a line between like I'm working as a filmmaker and doing filmmaking type things, and to me that would be, actually just hand me that. I'm so sorry.
That's right.
I'll kill it. We can cut around this. But like, so to me, there's a line in the sand between filmmaking and content creation. So we have Behind the Rabbit Productions, and there's production work that we do mainly for ourselves. And then we have Behind the Rabbit Media, which is podcasting, web content, that kind of thing. And when I first started covering film festivals and talking to people, for me, it wasn't like, oh man, I wish I had a film in this festival. It was, let me talk to people who have gotten into festivals and see if I want to be there. See if that makes sense for me. because the impetus was, let me get my name out there, let me get my face out there, let me connect with people and see what they're doing. Let me just learn, let me learn how this works before I just jump into it. Because I hadn't been in a fest in a really long time, and I given the way festivals are, I didn't know if I was going to be like a festival filmmaker.
Ooh, explain that.
So there are certain films that do really well in film festivals. I pivoted years ago from wanting to make feature films to wanting to make more television and serial content. I felt like that was my wheelhouse, and I was better suited to that type of writing, that type of storytelling. And I didn't really want to. I kind of lost. I mean, I'd love to make a feature film, but it's making a feature film now. Now, this is all America, so I don't know what it's like. You can tell me if it's different where you're at. But so in America, you have certain films that are like really, quote, festival friendly.
Yeah.
And this is the stuff, and there's a lot of politics and stuff that I won't go into. But there's a lot of things that you kind of have to, a lot of criteria you have to meet, a lot of boxes you need to check on forms and things. And a lot of those boxes I don't check.
In what ways, though?
Well, I mean, it's like, like I said, I'm not going to get too into the politics, but it's a type of thing where, they want films that are in the independent world. Like, there's festival films that you can make and do well in festivals. Like, trying to think of an example, but there have been certain films that have done really well on the festival circuit and then gotten some, play. And now, if you want to be in the big festivals, like, you need a name in the movie.
Yeah.
You have to have a real budget, and I wasn't making movies with names. I was making movies with, the best actors I could find, and we're all working on like a no budget level, and I'm just making them for me, basically. And when I started really making like shorts and stuff again, all I did was say, you know what? I developed this method of like no budget style filmmaking, and some of that can get into a festival, and sometimes it's just not right for it.
Yeah.
Because and also you have to, if you're going to be a festival, if you want to try to be a festival filmmaker, you got to have the money to do that. So you can literally spend nothing on your movie, but spend all of your money trying to get into these festivals because they're not cheap.
Yes, I've known a filmmaker or two to do that.
So if you have like, for instance, if you have a film with, say you've got a decent level of talent in it, where these people are they're not household names. You're not putting Tom Cruise in the movie. You're not putting even Bob Cruise in the movie. But you're getting somebody who's got a name of sorts.
Yeah.
So like, and it's much of the people that I've had on the show in terms of actors. So people like a Catherine Curtin or a Lucas Hassel. People have been on major television shows like The Blacklist or Orange is the New Black, or stuff that people have watched and heard of, but they're not A-listers, they're not like movie stars.
Yeah.
But these are all people working like television, either as day players or as regulars, and when you put them in a festival level movie, they'll get in. I interviewed people who had a movie with Richard Jeni in the movie. Now, Richard Jeni isn't a household name, but if you saw his face, you'd know him because he's been in like a gajillion TV shows and films.
Okay.
So like or like people like so I interviewed Tara Westwood recently, and Tara's been on different TV shows and movies. She's just in that movie Plane with Gerard Butler.
Oh, okay.
As I think the girl in that movie probably. Yeah. But, she made a short film and it had her and Robert John Burke, and, like Isaiah Washington, I think was the other person. So it's like, these are people that people know and they've seen, but very simple movie. It's like 4 people in a room.
Yeah.
It's about a socially charged topic. Like that one's about guns in America. So hot button topic. Solid writing. She directed it. She's also in it. And good actors with some kind of a name.
Yeah.
Festival. That's a festival movie, you know. As opposed to what I was doing was like, I've been making like single character movies in one place,
Yeah.
you know, that kind of thing, which have gotten me into certain places. Like last year or the year before, we made a pilot, and it got into a few festivals. But if I hadn't been me, and if I didn't know these people who I was submitting to, if I didn't have something of a reputation of covering film festivals and knowing that world, never would have gotten in.
Okay.
You know?
So do you think, in terms of having names or not having names, do you think we're in a situation now where even if someone like Kevin Smith came out today, Clerks could have worked?
That's such a good question, man, because, you know, unfortunately, I don't have a time machine, but okay, Clerks is a great example. Years back, it's maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago, somebody had approached me about writing a movie that was an indie film. He said, I want to make this movie. He was a cameraman. His wife is an actress.
Okay.
Right. And they had access to like a grocery store down in Brooklyn. And they said, we want to make it like Clerks. We want to make it like down dirty, on the cheap, funny, you know, comedy and stuff. And I'm going to shoot it. You can write and direct it. I was like, dude, you can't make Clerks again.
Okay.
Like Clerks already exists.
Yeah.
Kevin Smith already exists, and he's still making Clerks movies. So you ain't gonna out Kevin Smith, right? But at that time, in the 90s, which was my formative years of like wanting to be a filmmaker and growing up and stuff and seeing those films, I knew the Kevin Smiths and the Robert Rodriguez and the, you know, early Tarantino and like all of those guys came up at this time when the business was like, we don't know what to do. We're like, we need something different. People aren't going to the movies like they were. And we want new faces, new voices. Because everybody's getting old. It's the same thing that happened in the 60s when Lucas and Francis Ford Coppola.
Frustrated.
And, you know, like, well, all the companies were being taken over at that time by, like, Pepsi-Cola. And they knew nothing about movie making.
Mm.
They just knew that the young market was a demographic. They needed to get that 18 to 35. And everybody in the film business at that time in the early 60s was like, the youngest guy on a film set was like 40. You know, all those guys have been making movies for 30 years.
Yeah.
And they're all getting ready to retire. So now you've got the Coppolas and the Lucases and the Spielbergs and the De Palmas. All these guys are coming up at a time, and like then Dennis Hopper makes Easy Rider, and he makes it for nothing, and it makes a ton of money at the box office.
Yep.
And we want that. Can somebody
Why
please
wouldn't
make
they? Yeah.
Easy Rider 2? And the 90s was kind of like the same thing. There were little films being made, and probably Spike Lee was the first one, like in the 80s.
She's Got to Have It in 89?
Yeah, when you get movies like She's Gotta Have It, and then in 89 when he made Do the Right Thing.
Yeah, that's it.
You know, Do the Right Thing was huge. Do the Right Thing is how you got Kevin Smith. He was inspired by that movie. Oh, I can make a movie that takes place on a day about real people. You know, like it doesn't have to be cops and robbers. It doesn't have to be genres. Like, it's just people talking.
Yeah.
You know,
masterpiece.
Now, if you tried to make that movie, it wouldn't get made today. You know, it's like, I saw this interview with Anthony Mackie. He was on a panel somewhere, and I don't know if you've seen it, but
yeah, I've seen it. I think I have. Yeah.
Where he's talking about, you know, there's no movie stars anymore.
Thor's the star.
Yeah, like now like Captain America's a star. Or, you know, the Falcon's a star. I'm not a movie star. You know, and whereas before you went to go see movie star movies in the 80s, like Stallone and Schwarzenegger and people like that. And he said, now we're just making movies for 16-year-olds in China. You know, and it's true. You know, it's a movie industrial complex right now. As far as festivals, you could make, you know, if you had really good people and a really good script, you could make a movie with people talking in it that might get into a film festival, but but they won't probably go beyond that.
It sounds like you're best for what you said you would be earlier on when you talked about television and series. Some of your ideas lean towards maybe episodic television, how we're seeing it now on Netflix and Amazon Prime. long episodes, long series. I mean, is that something you're considering doing again and approaching some of these networks?
Well, what we've been doing, so it like I said, the business is like twofold. So we got the media stuff, like the podcasting that we do, and then we have stuff that we develop, and most of the stuff we develop is for series. So we've got a drama right now that we've got, a series Bible and like 8 or 9 episodes, treatments. We've got a number of like doc projects that would be series as well. So, but for me, the trick was like, well, how do I get in those doors? Because I don't have an agent or anything. I don't have somebody knocking on doors for me. So, again, the podcast is talking to people at the festivals, talking to people on the air, getting to know, hey, how do you do this? What does it take to, how many? Cause you're always going to have to jump through a number of hoops, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, how many hoops do I have to jump through, and where do they lead me? And is this an avenue for me? So, if you want to be a filmmaker today and you want to get your first, and this has been true for a long time, years ago, probably 20 years ago, I was at a thing at DCTV, which is an organization here that does a lot in doc filmmaking. So I was talking to these guys who were like film brokers back then, and they still have, like, they call them sales agents now.
Yeah.
So you make your film and you get one of these guys and they get it to distributors. So I asked the guy, I was like, well, I said 2 questions. First, is the industry as genre driven as I think it is? He said, yes. I said, if you were going to make your first film, what genre? And before I could finish the sentence, he said, oh, horror. Just make a horror movie. I said, really? He said, yep. There's always a market for it.
Yeah.
There's always a market for it. You can, back then it was VOD, it was like DVDs directed, and then now, of course, it's streaming. And I've had I just interviewed recently a horror director who made a found footage horror for like no money. Him and a couple of his friends out in the desert got into festivals, and now it's getting distribution. I'm not a horror filmmaker, so I haven't, it's not my genre, it's not my milieu. But if I were to make movies, that's what I would make. So in lieu of that, it's like, well, okay, what will sell? And there's a whole process that I go through in terms of development of like different questions that this particular project has to answer before I will even greenlight it for myself.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
You don't want to end up wasting your time and everybody else's if you're not looking at it in a full way like that.
It's one of those things where if you have a good sense of who you are as a storyteller, and you can maybe plug into that mystical zeitgeist, and find something that fits both criteria, then that's a project that you could do. And there's also stuff like, we have stuff that we develop, and then there's also stuff that we make. And like right now I'm working on a short film script, and it's getting to the point where I'm like, can I make this?
Yeah.
Is this within my means to make? Or if I try to make it on my own, is it going to be less than I want it to be? And that's it's a hard conversation to have with yourself.
Yeah, it is.
Where you wind up going like, all right, well, maybe this is just a script for right now, and I'll work on another thing that I can actually shoot. Because the way I've been working was, and I've done shows of No Rest for the Weekend about it, where it's like this resource style filmmaking where I work backwards. So I say, what do I have? And then what's a story that fits that criteria? So like, I have this location, I have that location, I have these people that I can write for. Maybe I can get this camera or this, and sometimes it's been where, so for instance, I made a short film during the pandemic where it's like, okay, where can I shoot? I can probably shoot in Central Park because we don't have to worry about COVID restrictions there. I had an actor that I was talking to who I'd worked with before on the pilot project, and so she's good. I'll write it for her. And then it was a matter of whittling it down to make it simple enough so that I could execute it well.
That's amazing, because I call that
Not
working
easy,
forwards.
mate.
No, it's not easy. But I mean, I always see that as working forward, because if you don't consider what you've got to help you make your short film or your feature film or whatever, it's almost like you just have this imagination and you're writing stuff that is like, and then the tank appears and then the dinosaur erupts out of a volcano and He-Man appears or whatever. But you may stay stuck in that way. So you have to write, to a certain degree, what you've got and what you can do. So it's like, I know you said working backwards, but it feels like you're actually working forward. It keeps you consistent.
Well, you're building, so it's like, this is my foundation and this is what I'm going to build my house on. Whereas with most writing, they'll tell you, don't worry about what just write.
Just write, yeah.
Which is how writers work. I don't write like a writer. I write like a producer.
Yeah.
I write like a director. I write like, and lately I've developed this method of, I start developing an idea visually first. And I start thinking of, I start thinking, oh, what can I get? What? It usually the biggest thing is location.
Yeah.
Especially in New York, man. I don't know what getting locations
Same
like in London, but
it's not easy.
Oh man, it is so difficult. But once you say, okay, you know what, I can get the studio for a day, or I can get this place for a day, or I could shoot it on Coney Island where they won't bother me, or I can shoot it in the park, or whatever it is. Then you go, all right, then, and then so what I've done is like, all right, so I'll give you a scenario like, do you know what the Marvel method is? Have you ever heard of this?
The Marvel method. I've read about how they make films, but
well, this is long before the film. So this goes back to Stan Lee, when Stan Lee was running Marvel before it was, before they even thought about movies. So Stan was the editor, and he was also the main writer. He was inventing all these characters, and he's working with guys like Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko and John Romita, all these legends, and great artists. But Lee didn't have time to write all of the scripts.
Yeah.
So he would just sort of dash out an outline of the script, or sometimes he would just sit down with the writer and be like, this is the story. This is what happens. Or sit down with not the writer, but the artist, and say, this is what happens. This is going to be the plot. And then the artist would have to plot out the story in pictures.
Oh, I see.
And they would have to draw everything. And then Stan would come in later, look at the drawings, and then add dialogue and add description where he needed to.
I see.
So the visuals are telling the story. It's a visual medium, comics. So is film, right? So then I saw the making of Fury Road, Mad Max Fury Road.
Yeah.
Which I love that movie. It got nominated for Best Picture. I wish it would have won. But that film was made that way. It's made in story. There's about 3,000 storyboards of that. It's a comic book. And all the lines are just added wherever you need lines.
Yeah.
Now, if you're a no-budget filmmaker, what's the biggest pain in the ass on set? Sound.
Yep.
So what I would do is I would start to think in terms of, all right, I would start basically writing and storyboarding in storyboards. Get the idea and start, like, I'm not a great artist. I'm no Jack Kirby or,
Yeah, Pinman, whatever you need. Yeah.
But, like, I would start sketching out the story, and then I would take those boards, I put them into my I would just scan, like, pencil and ink sketches, put them into my editing system, and start cutting it like a poor man's animatic, basically.
Yeah.
And then I watch and see, oh, you know what? I need another shot there. I need another thing. And then that helps me before I've even written a word of dialogue. And then I go back and then I go, oh, where does this need dialogue? Oh, I can throw in a line here. Maybe like it's all voiceover.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't need the dialogue, because it's a visual medium.
Yeah, completely.
But a lot of writers start with dialogue. A lot of actors think acting is dialogue.
Yeah.
But film is not a dialogue-friendly medium. Like, once you have two characters in a room sitting talking like we are now,
yeah,
it gets real boring real quick.
Okay.
So,
how do you feel about that with films like Before Sunrise and Before Sunset?
Well, I think they're great. They're great. if you can, let me put it this way: if you can get those people, awesome. If you can get Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy to show up for your movie,
The three of them, yeah.
you know, if you
Well
get
done.
those, if you get, you know, and you know, if you get people like William H. Macy, or like if you get like these awesome actors, yeah, write as much dialogue as you want.
Yeah.
But if you're working on a no budget level and you're not paying people and you got to get somebody out in 6 hours, don't write a dialogue heavy script. It'll take you all day. It eats up time. You know, the films that I've made are very short too. They're like 3-minute long films,
Yeah.
you know, because I can't spend days of somebody else's time. Like, that's the number one thing. It's like, whoever you're working with, either like, so the last short film I made was literally 4 people on set. It was the actor, me, and then 2 other people who were helping out.
Nice one.
And I wrote it, I shot it, and I directed it. And we shot it all in a day, in an afternoon, in Central Park, and around Central Park. And there was dialogue in it, but it was all voiceover.
Oh, okay.
You know, and with that, like, we're able to put it together with voiceover and music and a few sound designy things here and there. That was it. You know, it's writing within your means. It's hard.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's like the mantra around is like, simple does not equal easy. It's always that way.
You said you shot the film, and I know you do camera reviews on YouTube and everything. What do you think the situation is now with camera? Because I've come to the conclusion that pretty much all of them...
The arms race we're currently in digital cameras?
All of them are of a certain standard at least. So we're in a situation where I don't think you can probably get a bad camera now for your short film, your narrative project. If it's a corporate gig or a wedding or a studio, it's a different conversation in that way for me. But do you think sometimes working with people, the camera may be a big selling point still? Because I've been in situations, and I know other filmmakers that have been, and when someone says, oh, I've got an Alexa, or I've got a C300 Mark II, it excites people. But if you was to say maybe you had a Sony A7S, people wouldn't be that interested. How's it been for you?
You know, it's interesting. Every project is different. For myself, you know, it's kind of whatever camera I can get. You know, whatever camera I can afford, whatever camera I have access to, I can write it for that. You know, I've shot stuff with this little camera here. Okay. I've shot stuff with my DSLR, and I've also, you know, I've worked on sets where they had, you know, 2 or 3 Arri Alexas running, or, you know, 6 FX9s, or it's really kind of like, there are people, if you're going to try to be a camera, like if you're going to try to be a DP, or you're going to try to be, you know, there are people who get hired because of their gear.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, hopefully they have to have a decent reel. Hopefully they can use the gear. Yeah. But I've seen people who have like, oh, I just got this Red camera and stuff. It's like, you know how to use that thing? You know, like, and some of them don't. So, yeah, you know, you have to be really careful. And people go, oh, this is impressive because you have, quote, a real camera.
Wow, that's a bit offensive. But,
you know, but, you know, it's all depending on the job. I know professionals who have shot low-budget commercials with an A7S II, and they look great. You know, I've shot stuff with an A7S II and cinema lenses that looks great. You know, just with little Rokinon lenses, and just be out on the street. Yeah. You know, look great. Stuff goes on the reel. But, you know, for certain gigs, like especially the corporate thing, like we talked about when I did I reviewed cinema cameras like the C100, the C300, and I even did a review of the FX9. Those cameras are cameras that look impressive. So, but, you know, like for my money, like I would take, for instance, the FX9 is a newer camera, has more capabilities than, say, a C300 or C300 Mark II, right? But if given the choice, I'd go with the C300 because I've shot with that camera a bunch of times. Yeah. And I know it really well. and I know I'm going to get better results out of that camera
Than the
than
FX9.
would, which, the FX9, I'll use it for like a day.
Yeah.
Like I use it for a day or two and shot a few things with it. But the camera that I know inside and out, that I'll go with that every time.
Good choice.
And, for gigs though, I mean, to me, it's like, do they have a budget? And, I've seen things where like, people wanted to hire me for, we want to shoot stuff for acting reels. It's like, okay, great. You want to shoot some scenes. Fine. We want you to do it. And then I'll go, okay, what's the rate like? And it's usually way lower than you want it to be.
Mm.
And then they're like, oh, we're going to shoot 3 scenes in a day. I'm like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
And it's like, by the way, if you want this, and this, how's all that getting there? Who are the other people on the crew? Oh, we're just going to have you shoot it,
Wow.
kind of thing. And you're like,
Superman.
yeah. So it's like, so I'm supposed to light everything.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to operate the camera, and I'm supposed to get the gear there back and forth for this money. So you really have to be careful. And the guys who do have like a red package or an Alexa or something, that's great, but they're super expensive, and they should be, because you're not just getting them. They're tacking on a rental fee with their gear.
Yeah.
So whether you rent it from them to use it or you get it from a rental house, either way, you're paying more money for it.
Yeah. It's not debatable.
And you have to put it in the budget. Like
Yeah.
you have to have that. Because there's people like, oh, I know so and so. He's got a red weapon or whatever, and red dragon, or they got all those weird names.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, that's great. But if you're going to try to hire that guy for real, he's going to cost you a lot more money for that camera.
Yeah.
Because the other thing that people don't realize is that when you have a camera like that, you need a crew. Like if you nobody rolls up with an Arri Alexa by themselves.
No way. It wouldn't even be possible.
No,
Yeah.
it's not that way. So unless you have the crew to support it, you're not making no budget films with that thing.
Yeah.
You're making, you have to have, you need an AC, you need people and it's big and cumbersome and heavy and a lot of work,
Mhm.
Like even the FX9, which you could use for dock work and things, but that thing's a beast.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to
Yeah.
lug that thing around. Even the C300 Mark II, that's a wheel case for me.
Yeah.
Like I can't just put that in a backpack.
No.
That thing is, and you need a bigger tripod, you need a bigger support system.
Yeah.
Even though you could be a single operator with that camera, and I have. It's easy enough to use. I shot a little handheld movie with it where it was just me operating, and it was great. But it's a lot of camera.
Yeah. It's heavy.
Now, the camera that I like the most, which I think it looks great and is so much easier to operate, is the Sony FX3.
Okay.
It's basically the same as an A7S, A7S III. It's the same camera, but in a more cinema-friendly body.
Yeah.
But that little guy, oh my God, great results, super light. I can run it on my little monopod or just handhold it. Film looks great. The autofocus is amazing. So like part of my day job is I shoot behind the scenes on movies.
Great.
I shot behind the scenes on a couple of feature films last year. And with a camera like that, especially if you're a one-man band, you need great autofocus. You need to be able to run and gun.
Yeah.
Like you can't, and you can't be in the way, which is the biggest. You don't want to hear, "Yo, BTS guy."
Yeah. Yeah.
Clear the frame. You don't want to hear that. That was the biggest thing I was dread. My goal, other than getting great shots, was not to be. But you often find when they set up, you want the same angle that they're shooting.
Oh, I see.
Because it's the best one.
Yeah. Yeah.
The benefit is that you get their lighting.
Yeah.
So you get this shot and it looks amazing. It was because some other pro DP lit it. All
Yeah,
you had to
yeah.
do is show up and get the thing in focus and get the
Press
exposure
record.
right.
Yeah, yeah.
And I got some great stuff that way. But yeah, for me, it's like, and the FX3, now they have the FX30, which is like half the price. Great. It's an APS-C camera, but who cares?
Yeah.
It's not full frame, but you get great results with it. It's whatever camera you can afford.
Yes.
And
that works for you in that way.
But I won't say gear doesn't matter, because it does.
Yeah.
You can again, if you're working from your resources, if someone said, here's, you have this, I have an older DSLR that I shoot a lot of content for the show with. Been using it for years.
Mm-hmm.
It works for what I need it to.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to make cinematic, I'm not shooting it for my DP reel or something but for shooting interviews, for shooting in the studio, it works fine. And I'm not going to go out and spend a bunch of money on another camera to do that type of work. But, when I've done the camera reviews, part of my method also with doing the show, like you were talking about, content creation versus filmmaking. So, I'll combine the two. So I wanted to test out, I want to say, okay, well, what's a good, inexpensive, I'll use finger quotes when I say inexpensive because nothing's inexpensive anymore, but inexpensive camera package to make a movie. I got an A7S II with a set of Rokinon Cine lenses.
Yep.
And I made a little movie with it.
Nice one.
To not only to review the camera, but to build my reel, to have another movie, to have another directing experience, get more directing hours in, and get and test that package out for me. If I needed to make a small film, this is something that's affordable. The FX3, I reviewed that camera, and spent a couple of days with it. Not too much time, but I got to know it well enough. When it came time that I got this BTS shooting gig, and they said, "What camera package do you want?" I was like, "This is what I want. I need this camera with this lens. Here's the guy to go to," and they got everything for me.
Excellent.
And then when I showed up, I wasn't like, "Oh, how does this thing work?" And then same thing with, the C100 or the C300. I had been using the C300 on a gig for a while, and I wanted to test out the Mark II, so I reviewed it, and I really liked that camera. The Mark III is great too, but you can get the Mark II for half the price.
Sounds better.
And people who buy cameras, I've had DPs say, let the rental house buy the camera.
Yeah.
I don't need to buy the camera, But again, if you're a work for hire, hired gun type of DP, having a camera package could get you hired.
Yeah.
If they can afford it. It would actually be good if you have a sort of your A camera package, I've got an Alexa, a Red, a whatever, I've got this, and then I've also got the smaller, more affordable type thing. So if somebody's not making, Lawrence of Arabia, you can get a decent camera for, because what is it, $1,000 a day or something like that to get in or $750 a day just for the body. So,
and a deposit.
Right, exactly, which is what a DP. Now, the other thing you got to keep in mind too is I can get probably a smaller camera package without having to spend the money on things like production insurance. But if I'm going to get a Red and take that out, even if I have the money, now I've got to go spend another $1,000 to get $1 million worth of insurance just to insure that camera.
Yeah.
So everything on a film set is money, and it's more people and more time. You can't do anything fast. You'll get great shots, but they ain't going to be fast. It's like that old maxim of fast, cheap, good, pick two. You're not going to get fast and cheap with that camera. Everything's going to be more expensive. Everything's going to take more time. And more time, more money.
More money.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Rokinon lenses. How would you compare them to Canon lenses? They're kind of in the same...
I like both. I mean, the Canon Cine lenses are great.
Yeah.
But they're huge.
Yeah.
They weigh more than my camera half the time. And, when I was shooting with a little Sony... When I was shooting with a Sony A7S, I don't want to put this giant Canon lens on it. The Rokinons are a lot smaller and lighter quality-wise. I mean, I haven't done tests on them or anything, but of course the Canons are going to look better. There's better glass in there. It's bigger, heavier glass, but it's supposed to be on a bigger, heavier camera.
Yeah.
If you're shooting with something like an FX3, it's a great camera, or an FX30. The Rokinon is going to be better for that camera just because it's smaller and lighter and portable. And the other thing that I liked about them was they were very easy to operate and focus. The
focus ring.
The aperture, the focus ring, everything's right here, so I can literally just hold that thing and work the lens while I'm using it. and I don't need a team, with that. With a Canon lens, I need to put the focus wheel on there. I gotta probably gonna get an AC to pull focus for me. Both work, but if you're like a run and gun style, it's like there's certain cameras, like if you're making a documentary, you don't want, a big giant camera. You'll get like great images, but if you're running and gunning and trying to focus on the fly,
you'll get less images probably.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about what you want. Like if you want cinematic looking, like, so when I was on this feature and they were shooting with the Alexa, like, just gorgeous, man. Everything I saw on the monitors just looked amazing. But, you got to light it, you got to set it. And even if you're running and gunning in a commercial with that thing and you have a single operator, you still have to have a remote focus puller. Even if he's hand holding, he's got to put the big easy rig on.
Yeah.
Because there's no way you can hold that thing unless you're He-Man or something,
Yeah.
So you have to have that, like, you have to have a system built around that. Whereas with a Sony A7S III or an FX3 and a set of Rokinons, I can just do everything myself. And I've been a DIY filmmaker, which I don't recommend, by the way.
Oh, that's interesting. You don't recommend?
When you're starting out, yes.
Okay.
Be as technical as possible. Do as much yourself as you possibly can, especially in the post-production realm, because even if you can get somebody to shoot with you for a day, you're not going to get somebody to edit your movie for free.
Yes, that's the hardest, unless it's a good friend or something.
Even a good friend. I've had good friends that I work with who just, especially if they are editors, especially if they're pros, right? They don't have time.
Okay.
Your project, which started here, it's like, oh, I got a paid gig. Next thing you know, you're at the bottom. And next thing you know, a year has gone by before they've even looked at it. If they're pros, they're working. I'm a professional editor. I do it. It's part of my living. I have to prioritize my own editing, my own stuff, under whatever I'm getting paid for, because I got to make deadlines.
Yeah.
But I will stay up to 2:00 in the morning and edit my own stuff. I don't expect anybody else to do that. I'm not putting my friends through that. So that was the most empowering thing and back then I was using like Final Cut. I think the first thing I used was like Final Cut Express, and then I used Final Cut 7. And then I did a documentary show. It was like an interview show where I was interviewing other, people like in the arts and theater and music and whatever, and doing sort of profiles on them.
Yeah.
And I just did it to learn how to shoot interviews how to edit them. And originally it was going to be like I'd have my friend shoot it and I was going to have him edit it. But, of course, he never had time. So by the end of it, it was just like, all right, give me the footage. I'll figure it out. And I sat with another friend of mine who was a producer on a daytime TV show that shot out of like Rock Center.
Yeah.
And he would, they would literally like get up, grab the video camera, go shoot, and he would put together packages. And back then, he was using Final Cut 7, which is not the fastest program in the world. But when we went to edit the interview, I went to his place for like an afternoon, and he said, okay, this is how I do it. And I had edited things before, but editing interviews, which is a skill that every editor should have, because it's the most basic. It's the ham and cheese sandwich of editing. You have to know how to do this if you want to work as an editor. But once I knew how to do that, then I was like, all right, now I get it.
Yeah.
Now this is, and then you start to develop systems and methods and how you organize. And, I learned how to organize from another friend of mine. I worked with him as an assistant and then became his editor working on other projects because he was like, this is how I set it up. This is how I set up my bins. This is how I set up my footage. And you go, okay. But so if you're an independent DIY filmmaker, that should be the first thing almost that you learn. Also, it will tell you a lot about what you need because I have been in fights with myself as an editor, kicking the director because he didn't get the shot that I needed in the edit.
Yeah.
I was making a short film. It was like my second or third short film. My friend of mine was shooting it for me, and getting through the scenes. We take like a little break, and I'm talking to the actors or whatever, and I see him. He's off shooting. So I go up to him. I was like, "What are you shooting?" He's like, "Oh, I'm getting you B-roll." I was like, "What for?" And he's like, "Trust me." You're gonna, and then, I used every scrap of it in the footage. It's like, you don't think about that when you're planning scenes, that you're gonna need cutaways. You're gonna need stuff that you can cut to. You got a horse on set, shoot it. You got a dog, shoot the dog.
Yeah.
You got a sign, shoot the sign. Like whatever it is, like you, it's like you need that tape to help hold things together. And then, but if you've gone out and done it and you didn't get those things.
Yeah, I've been in those situations where there's been no B-roll, or anything like that. And I remember saying to a first-time filmmaker, you've got to get B-roll. And he was like, I know what I'm doing. I've got it all in my head. And I thought, I feel so sorry for the editor. And watching it, I just thought, wow, that was, without being horrible, it's like seeing ignorance on screen. Because you need those things to tell your story and to help the editor. And the whole project needs B-roll sometimes. It really does. But you said at the start, well, you didn't say at the start, you said earlier on that being a DIY filmmaker is something good to be when you do start, when someone picks up a camera or uses Celtech to write a script or whatever. But how do you feel about now, at the start, people being so heavily involved in social media to progress?
I feel like it's sort of a double-edged sword, because, and it's been a subject of debate for me because I've done both, where it's like, okay, so if you're a filmmaker, can you just be a filmmaker, or do you also have to be a quote unquote content creator? Do you need a YouTube channel? Do you need a podcast? Do you need to have an IG page and all that kind of stuff, or a TikTok or whatever? And there's people who are really good at one but not the other.
Yeah.
But you have to be careful, like making this show, for instance. Now, we have made, I think last year we put out nearly 50 episodes.
Congrats.
Every year we're doing this. Like we're doing it at a level of like a daytime talk show or something. It's not a daily show, but it's a weekly show. And if you're going to do something like that, there's benefits to it because you can have something of you that you can put out every week. And you can show people, hey, I'm working.
Yeah.
Even when you're not working,
Yeah.
And, I'm a freelancer, so I go through periods where I don't work. And when I'm not working on this, I'm doing this. And this has kept me sane.
Good.
Because I go nuts if I don't have anything to do.
Yeah.
But, it's also becomes its own. A friend of mine explained it to me. He said, like the content creation is a hamster wheel. If you're making content like a podcast, weekly podcast or something like that, it's this. You're running around in circles and you're doing the same thing all the time and it never ends. It's infinite.
Yeah.
You could do it until you die. Like it's just forever kind of thing. Making a film is get a bunch of people together, they spend a bunch of money, you shoot it for X amount of time, and then done. And then if you're not the producer that's handling distribution, like if you're just working on a film, well, it's over. Like you've done that film, then it comes out a year later or whatever, and that's your relationship. When you do this, this is your wife, like this is
and your mistress.
Yeah, it's you are constantly keeping up with it and working. And recently we changed more to like an entertainment news format.
Yeah,
and that's even crazier because you're trying to keep up and try to keep the schedule more current so that you're not weeks behind, which usually podcasts are a little bit behind.
Oh gosh, yeah.
So now you're trying to do that.
Yeah, you're gonna be.
Which we have a blog, so the blog keeps up. Because since doing New York Film Festival, Tribeca, places like that, now I get a ton of press releases every week, and that's where a lot of my interviews come from. And I'm interviewing filmmakers on press junkets, which is interesting. Is another. Now they do them all via Zoom, so it's pretty easy. But it's like, okay, you got so and so star, but you got them for 12 minutes.
That's quite a long time, isn't it?
It's not bad,
Yeah.
but it's not a show. It's not a full
Oh, I
podcast.
see what you
So you
mean.
got to figure
Yeah.
out, how am I going to make up the rest of this?
Yeah.
When can I put this out so that it's still current, so it comes out when the movie comes out, and people still, then you worry about all that stuff.
Yeah.
And whereas before that wasn't exactly what we're doing, even doing the film festival stuff. When I first started doing film festivals, I would edit individual interviews and pop them out almost like we shot. I want to say the first second year we did Soho, we shot like 20 episodes or 20 interviews, right? Shot 20 interviews. They were up by noon the next day. Wow. I came home, edited them, put them out, uploaded them, And, then years later, I was like, wait a minute, this is way too much work.
Yeah.
I'm killing myself doing this. And, the older you get, the less energy you have, so you have to be more conservative. But so I was like, you know what, I'm going to shoot enough to get an episode, and that's going to be my episode, and that's it. Now it's covered, and something else comes along, I can go shoot that. But, I have to really consider my time, because now film festivals are knocking on my door. Do you want to come cover us and stuff? And you have to be really discerning about, okay, is this something people want to see? This is, then you start it's almost like a television mindset.
Yeah.
And then you get to the point where, like last year, between September and October, by the end of October, I had shot enough for the entire rest of the year, because it was Soho and Bushwick and NAB and this one and that one. And then, and then New York Film Festival, we were doing reviewing a bunch of the movies from there. So like I had all this material, and then by the end of the year, I was just like, wait a minute, am I running this show? Or is it running me? That's the danger of being a content creator.
Yeah.
Because at some point, the show feels like it's running you. So you have to stop and evaluate and go, oh wait, where do I really need to spend my time? Because I've had a lot of advice from people, and people who were, spent 25 years in TV, people have run studios, people who will tell me, Jason, you're doing good stuff. Just keep doing it. And I'm like, every other month I think about quitting,
Wow,
honestly.
that much.
Because, you get to a point where you're like, well, should I be making a film right now?
The balance is hard.
Should I quit doing this craziness and running it and helping other people publicize their films?
Yeah.
Or should I just make one for me? But the trade-off has been, well, because I do this show, I've gained the connections that if I do make something, I can have someplace to pitch it, or I have, so, it's been that back and forth of, and so that's something you, like, before you say, oh, I'm a filmmaker, I'm going to start a podcast. Great. But can you maintain the podcast? Can you maintain your Instagram show? Can you maintain your YouTube channel over a period where it can build enough traction, get you into doors, do what you want it to do for you without killing you at the same time and taking you away from your focus, which is filmmaking?
Your true passion.
Yeah. So, even, I don't know, how long have you had this show now?
Since 2017.
Okay. So you've been doing it as long as I have.
But admittedly, it has, at times, taken me away from filmmaking in a way where I've said, whoa.
I got to make a show, right?
Yeah, I've got to, well, no, I've got to reconsider how I'm behaving to a certain degree, because I'm not making anything anymore. But I seem to be speaking to all these filmmakers that are making stuff. So I've got to come to grips with that,
And you go, okay, wait a minute. I'm helping other people publicize their films. Should I just be making my own thing? And, it's, yes, if you want to be a filmmaker, you've got to take the time to make movies. But, the thing that I've also said to other people, it's like, well, I can afford to make this show. I can afford to do this because I've developed a method of doing it. Doesn't cost me a lot of money. Doesn't take me a ton of time, and I've been able to maintain it over this marathon of time. Whereas trying to make a film It's a lot more money. I've never done a crowdfund campaign in my life. Every,
neither have I, no.
like everything I've ever spent has been on my own, out of my own pocket. So, and I can make this, and this has opened doors for me. So that's why I've kept doing it for my own personal. The other part is like I love talking about movies. I love, there is a passion behind doing this, and I like the opportunities that I've gotten to meet all these great people and have them talk about their careers and just learning from them. Like I was out to demystify the business for my audience, but also for myself. And like last year I went to Hollywood and I interviewed a bunch of people out there. We call it the Hollywood edition shows.
Okay.
And said, well, what's it like to really live and work here? And I got people to be really honest with me and tell me, yep, this is the way it is. I showcased a bunch of young people on an episode we called Origin Stories.
Okay.
Where we shot them more documentary style, where I was off camera.
Yeah.
We shot it at JMR Studios, which is my sponsor. Beautiful, looked great, and because I wanted to get back to that doc sense of shooting. And also, like, now I'm promoting these wonderful young people who are up and coming, and it was a selection of people, like one's like an actress model, the other one's an actress filmmaker, then we got an actor dancer and a comedian, all these different types of people from different backgrounds, and seeing how they're all alike, seeing how they deal with social media, how they keep themselves going, and you can learn from them too. Like, so, it's having, and then I could take that and I made a little series on Footprint Network, which is where the show streams as well. We stream in a bunch of different places. We stream online on Footprint. We stream also, we're on YouTube and places like that, and on the website, of course. But then we're also on television. Mm-hmm. So I have all these avenues of distribution. But because I've been able to experiment and do these different things under the guise of, let's do an episode of No Rest for the Weekend, I've been able to develop other shows from it,
right?
And take off from it, so that whatever I do, it's like I want to get multiple uses out of the content, and also just explore and build and do all that stuff.
You have been exploring and building, that's for sure. And I've loved speaking to you, Jason.
It's been great, man.
It's been great. You give me plenty to think about, which I like. And I hope you're in London soon. We can go and have fish and chips, drink tea. Visit a London pub and we'll continue the conversation.
Well, man, next time you're in Brooklyn, come here. But yeah, I definitely say for your podcast is mainly about filmmaking.
Completely, yeah. Filmmaking Conversations.
We do filmmaking. We have those conversations as well, but we're now more like entertainment news and film festival news and things like that, which also helps creators, because if you're basically if you're in America, we do talk in international festivals and stuff like that, but the ones we cover are mainly here, like in New York. But I know people who just listen to the podcast. They're like, oh, I want to know what film festivals are coming up and know the dates and things like that. And, what's happening with them. And I've interviewed, like, if you are looking to get your film into a festival here, especially here in America, I've interviewed a number of festival directors.
Oh, wow.
Who have come in, and programming directors, heads of festivals. And I said, what do you look for? What do you want? How do you guys evaluate films? What are you looking to see this year? So that you can get a sense. Because the hardest thing is knowing what film festivals to submit to. Yeah. So it's like gives you a sense of what film festivals are right for your type of movie, and if it's this kind of film, and you go, oh, you know what, I think these people would like me, then spend the money and do it. But if not, don't, and you can make a better decision elsewhere. Especially if you're not like Tribeca, Telluride, TIFF, those big guys out there. Yeah. Some people, it might take a while to send to Tribeca, and something maybe more local would support their film. I mean, I had somebody early on in, season 5 or 6 who was from the Tribeca Film Institute, who they finance documentaries, and he talked about how they work with filmmakers and how they, what they need and what they expect, and the stuff that nobody really tells you. That was what I was out to get. I was out to get the stuff that nobody really talked about, that said, this is how you do it. Like I ask people for advice all the time. And they'd say,
Good.
well, well, shoot for the moon and get the stars. I'm like, no. What's something I can do on a set tomorrow?
Yeah.
What's something I can do in my career tomorrow that makes sense? And they're like, oh, yeah, if you're gonna direct your first film, get a good DP or get an AD. Make sure that you have lots of a producer who does this.
Yeah.
Get people who, and, whether or not people listen to that advice or not, I mean, I hope they do. I think filmmakers are notoriously bad at listening to advice. But if you've taken away something from that, then, it did the job. And now, hopefully we're still doing the job. And helping people out and helping audiences, too, find the entertainment they want.
Brilliant.
Right.
Brilliant. Great stuff, Jason. Thanks so much.
Have you thought of upgrading your cinematography game? Would you like to have an ASC cinematographer mentor you for free? Join veteran cinematographer Suki Medenzovic, ASC, Disney, Pixar, FX Networks, Netflix, American Horror Story. As he teaches you how to create beautiful images using 3 lighting techniques he has mastered on film sets over his 30-plus years in the film industry. Each technique uses basic, low-cost lighting equipment so that anyone can achieve beautiful visuals no matter your project's budget. If you want to take your cinematography to the next level, visit filmmakingconversations.com to sign up for instant access. If you like this podcast, share it with friends, leave a comment in the comments section, and hit the subscribe button.